some of the like racial backlash that you guys would have received, like you said, with the unfair treatment at the concert, you found that system, because it's like my hands are on this work and I've received this physical thing from the work, you prefer that to now? Because we know when talking, a lot of people would think that like our generation, the younger generation, is getting it easier than it was back then. But from what you're saying, you kind of feel like it's not necessarily easier, but it's different, and the different is still hard.
Well, you could go to a pub and say, "Excuse me, mate, can I put on a gig here and whatnot?" And you'd probably say, "Yeah, well, I want the bar, no problem."
Yeah.
Right? And you could charge at the door, right? And people would come.
Yeah.
People would come, right, to listen to a live band, yeah, reggae band.
Yeah.
You don't see that today. When's the last time you've been to a live band to see a reggae band from local?
Yeah, no, probably 3 years ago on accident with the,
Right,
the group.
it's don't really happen. What has happened is that now, right, you might go and see a live band, right, but it's open mic,
Yeah.
right, and they don't charge to come in because the pubs are controlling it, and whoever's promoting it will get fee because, but that's it. So the entertainers are performing free.
Yeah.
That did not happen
Yeah.
back in the day. I can tell you now.
Yeah.
Why you want to fight broke out?
You couldn't run back then.
No. No. And it was also about this self promotion, self-reliance.
Yeah.
So you used to see man, you see like a little man in a dance. You must sell peanut.
Yeah.
And then you would see somebody, right, who craft, like who used to sell string pictures and whatnot. There was always people there, right, selling things that was their thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Man might sell a little pop. You know what I mean? But there was this appreciation. But you didn't have no choice. You know, if you want to make a little can, you have to do something.
Yeah.
And so there was that spirit of enterprise.
Yes.
No matter how small it was.
Do something.
You do something.
Yeah.
You know? Where today it's like, you know, people, they want to make some kind of way through multimedia by showing what they do. But then, you know, what you actually getting for it.
Yeah.
You know, there don't seem to be any financial
Yeah.
payback. And I think it's disturbing our creativity.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of creativity, then,
Yeah.
because I understand what you're saying. I find these days to make reach a financial goal in the creative space in general, the hill is a lot steeper. You can't like you said, go out to the pub when something's on and have your own thing going on at the same time. To be able to make money, you've got to get to a certain point and then make money.
Yeah.
But going back to creativity, how much of your culture, your experience, like you said, you mentioned when your siblings came over, they were painting pictures of Jamaica for you. How much of that part of your life has influenced your music? I know you've mentioned reggae already.
Well, okay, so back then, I used to create string pictures. So the string pictures would be probably a blackboard, say, I don't know, let's say a square board with a black cloth, and then an image of most likely Africa, but sometimes Jamaica, sometimes one of the other Caribbean islands, right, with the colors of that country or island. And people used to buy it. People used to buy it, stick it in the wall, whatnot. And back then, if I made a big string picture, I could sell it for £25 in the 80s. I don't know how much £25 in the 80s is today. Somebody Google it. But,
The inflation.
but you know what I mean? You know, so that would have been good. So I used to make a little living.
Yeah. From just that part.
From just that. Plus, we used to do part-time community work. So I used to work at youth clubs and whatnot. So I'd make a little bit of money there. So I was hustling, but hustling in the right way.
Of course.
But some of the best hustlers, you know, and I know the police ain't good like it. But some of the best hustlers back then, right, business people were those who were selling ganja.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because them could have buy £25 worth of ganja, right?
Yeah.
And make good money off of it, right? By the splitting it up, etc., 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 right? And to that place, so in time they could actually buy a house,
Yeah. Wow.
and you look at them and you don't know.
That's where it's come from.
That's what they were doing, right?
Yeah.
But then, politics got involved, and you might be saying, well, how could politics get involved with ganja? Well, trust me, politics got involved, and then there was definitely a switch and a change in society.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking about, I'm talking about in black society.
Yeah. Okay.
And I distinctly remember going to a dance. This must have been 89, 90. And there was a different atmosphere. And there was a different smell.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew me stop gold.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that smell was cocaine.
Yeah.
And strong, like alcohol. You never see anybody in our peers drunk. And all of a sudden you start seeing people drunk.
Yeah.
Which was like, okay. People high on drugs that you don't even know what kind of drugs it was. And even ganja, to me, ganja was spiked by some stuff. And then early 90s, you start to see some chemicals come into the environment. You start seeing people behaving crazy and whatnot. Crack. All these things was like some Americanism, which all of a sudden came into the area. Yeah. And then we started to hear stories about guns coming into the area, etc., etc. And the next thing you know, right, the place started to get violent. And, it was definitely political. Where most of the black communities in Birmingham, the black communities in Birmingham, I can tell you now, was Handsworth, Aston, Sartley, just a little bit of Neutrals, Smarleat, Barzoleet and Sparkbrook, Dairywood.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. And the fact that you can list, this is the only places where we were.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, right? So what happened, right? And people are not going to like this.
Yeah.
Most of our parents bought houses.
Yeah.
But we younger ones didn't have the finances to buy, right? Because there was no work, very little work, and the only people who was able to get accommodation was young black women.
Okay.
Right? We got them happy, give them something, right? And so obviously that the man then would go and live with the woman, them, etc. Right? And so invariably, what happened was then people started to get pushed out of those areas, pushed out of the areas.
Wow. So at what point then on this journey, because you've been in Birmingham this whole time, so walk me through that. So where were you during that period?
So the group was really my only financial, the only monies I was making was off the group.
Yeah. Or
from little community work I was doing, etc. I was doing about 2 or 3 different community works. I was making no money off the group. And so, like a lot of us at the time, right, we had to venture out of the West Midlands. And so I went to London, worked in the housing field and the homeless field. That's the first time you ever come across homeless people. I mean, people living on the streets. It was just like,
well, yeah.
What? In a big England,
yeah.
So I worked and lived in London for several years, and then came back late 90s. So I was down there for about 7 years, I think, which was a good experience. Came back due to family and whatnot, and then went into running community centres in Sandwell. And then did that for probably about 7-8 years, and then I went to Africa.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, lived in Africa for about 6 years. Came back.
Yeah.
1999, I qualified as a homeopath.
Okay. What does that mean?
So a homeopath is natural medicines.
Okay. Yeah.
Basically, and
Yeah.
it's a science
Mhm.
of prescribing medicines.
Yeah.
And I always said to myself, when I qualify, I'm going to Africa, set up a clinic, and I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I went to live in a little bit in Gambia, but went to live in Senegal,
Okay.
which surrounds the Gambia. I did that for 6 years or so, which was a good time. It was successful. But again, rural area in Africa,
Yeah.
you're not really making any money. But the success was that, the impact was positive and really helped a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
And also showing people how they can be more healthier by just living a natural way
Yeah.
and not relying on certain substances. And also, to rely more on their past. I always used to say to them, right, you're if you, no matter how far back you go, you're still here.
Yeah.
So therefore, right, your ancestors must have been doing something right.
Yeah.
I know to get wiped out.
Yeah.
So and when you're talking to people there, some people just, oh yeah, that bush there is good for this. This leaf is good for that, and they're always 100% correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what was happening is that people have had it and gone, right, take up pills. Pills which were like 2-3 years out of date. And invariably end up worse with a worse condition. And so it was about also educating people as well to rely more on their ancestral medicines and whatnot, etc., etc. And people were recovering from serious illness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And also as well, basic things like washing hands from going toilet. People might laugh after that, but unfortunately, when poverty lick, people forget basic things.
Yeah.
And so it was just educating people, but with a respect. Not trying to go down and say, well, my way is the better way. Me come from England and so. No.
Yeah.
Right, so,
It sounds like because as you've been talking from when you were younger at the youth club and the pastor or pastor in training at the time came and gave you your name, and up until now I'm hearing again bits and bits about like community and helping, and if I could say like outreach, even moving to London, part of what you did with the homeless and stuff. Has that always been something in yourself that you wanted to do, like helping other people, or did it kind of come about?
No, I always had that kind of wanted to help people, because I always remember from being a infant junior, and I always used to protect kids who were being bullied. I don't know where that come from, but I just I used to find it distasteful, and so I always used to get in the middle of it and protect people
Sort
like
things
that.
out.
And not like I was a good fighter or anything, but
you didn't want to stand on the side.
No. So I don't know. It was only where's that rebel spirit coming from as well? And I swear to you, it was about 2016, 2015, around that period of time. I'd been to Jamaica twice. And then there's something come up about a granduncle of mine. About some book. And I'm like, what? What are they talking about? Some book about my granduncle. And so my mother pipes up now. Oh yeah. Your granduncle was a communist,
Oh, what?
and he was a big tradesman in America,
Mm.
and you get kicked out to America. He went to live in Russia for a bit and whatnot.
Oh,
and I'm just like,
wow.
huh? What?
Yeah.
First time my mother ever mentioned
Ever
him.
said anything?
Yeah, and apparently, yeah, you know, there's a book on him.
Wow.
I'm trying to remember his name now. Reginald Smith, something like that. But yeah, he was a big trade union man
Wow.
in America
Wow.
during the time of, it must have been the 40s, 50s, when there was a lot of labor strikes and strife in America at the time, and a lot of, you know, anti-communism and whatnot, etc. Never heard about him. It was like, it was something that you didn't talk about.
Yeah.
And when I say they, I mean my mom's generation. Whatnot. Because apparently when he came back from Russia and America, the Jamaican equivalent to MI5 was watching him, and
Oh, wow.
etc. etc.
Wow.
etc.
Wow. Wow.
So when I hear all this, I'm like, no wonder I am the way I am.
Wow.
But and this is what got us into genealogy and trying to understand a bit
Where
more
you
about our
come from.
families, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. Because, you know, we are a product of our ancestors.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes even what our great grandparents did, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know because
It's true.
they don't talk about it, or they don't know it themselves, or whatnot, or them hide it because of some issue,
Yeah.
what
yeah.
them think might be shame, etc., etc. And so it's important that we know our ancestors.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. I know there's many times when my dad has been sitting down and talking to me, because he's a quarter Guyanese. He's half Guyanese, so I'm a quarter Guyanese. And his granddad, my great granddad, is a famous cricketer, but I didn't know until sitting and talking to them about
Yes.
it. So I completely understand what you're saying. You've mentioned Jamaica, and we're talking about ancestry, where we come from. After, you know, being in England and being born and raised and by the time you've gone back to visited Jamaica for the first time, gone there repetitively, what were those first few visits like for yourself, actually going there?
Well, the first time was fantastic. It was everything I thought it would be. But it was also an eye opener because, you know, you hear about, you know, grandpa's house and blah blah. You know, you go back, you're thinking like it's some mansion. You know what I mean? You go back, it's just a little wooden shack, and it was just like, how did all you growing in that place? But then we realized that was where my granddad was living then, and there was a bigger property at the back. But still, you know, the poverty was, though the poverty back then you could see was very stark to what we know, but also the welcoming and the happiness that you see with people, you know, is something that we didn't have in the UK. Saying that, the second time I went back, it had changed. And I don't think it's just there as well. I think it's all over because I've been going to Africa and whatnot. The first time I went to Africa to the last time I got to Africa, the changes are just like, wow. You know, so it's changing everywhere. For the good, I don't think so. I think the influences of the West, Americanism, is not doing us any favors. And you know, this basic civility, particularly with young people and whatnot, seems to be going out the window. And it's a concern.
Well, I understand. Even on the basic level, I was fairly surprised where my first time going to Jamaica, going around the island, certain areas, the further north you go, geographically, the further north you go, some people even start to sound American more than anything else. I thought that was quite surprising, at least. But I guess jumping back to England now and your community side of things, tell us a bit about how long you've been in Dudley, and have you brought that community involvement that you can naturally have to Dudley as well?
So unfortunately, I didn't live that long in Dudley. But whilst I was in Dudley, I was working in the mental health field.
Well,
So in the neighbouring borough, which was Sandwell,
yes.
and running a project there as a project manager. Managing at the time, I think it was 8 African Caribbean men with mental health problems, some with drug issues, dual diagnosis, etc., etc. So that was rough and hard. But again, it was a milestone for me because, and for a lot of people, because the idea of working with your brothers and sisters them was about treating them with respect and dignity and humanity. And so we got on really well, and none of the guys them relapsed. Not one.
Wow.
And none of them relapsed until I left.
Wow.
That says something. So, sometimes, me working with my people was never a, professional job. It was because we want to help my people in some way along the line. And after I came back from Africa, I stopped in Dudley for a little bit, but then I moved over to Wolverhampton. The real black country, like not like that here. And again, I went back into the mental health field, working for an organisation called ACCI, and another black organisation.
Wow.
And that's what I've been doing until last year. I retired.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And sad to leave the post. I was working as I had many different roles there, but the last 10 years or so I've been working as a talking therapist. What they call counselling. Really enjoyed it. And again, counselling was something I picked up when I was in London, and it's not that I wanted to be a counsellor. I was just naturally a good listener.
So that helped.
Yeah. And so mental health has always been a forte, but mental health is a difficult career to go into and last long, because if you're good at it, it affects you. Because, I'm sorry for saying, but in the black community, we all have a little bit of mental illness. And I say that simply because of where we're coming from.
Okay.
We cannot go through hundreds of years of slavery and come out of that righted. We're not righted, right? We might be 98% righted, but there's that 2%. And you sometimes you see it come out in one of your kids or one of your nephews or one of your nieces, or you know what I mean. And I'm fairly convinced in the future mental illness will be cured by one tablet.
You think it's going to advance?
Because mental illness is a wrong concept, really, right?
Okay.
Mental illness, not the name, so really, if I'm being honest, right? What we classify as a mental illness is a physical illness.
Okay. And what makes you draw that difference?
Well, where's the mind?
Yeah, well, fair enough. So you don't feel like
simple question. It's a simple answer.
Fair enough. It's a very simple.
Unless the mind is outside of our bodies, then therefore it's in our bodies. So therefore it's got to be a physical thing, somehow, but somewhere. You know what I mean? Because if the mind or mental illness, because at the moment, right, when somebody's acutely mentally ill, right, then give them a tablet, which is a physical substance.
So you think medicine will progress.
And you do see, calming down people, right? Perhaps, and giving them, some people, a better quality of life. So it's a physical thing.
Well, I understand the sign of, like, not like the track of thought. Like I get that it's physical medicine. So you've got a lot of care for people, even extending beyond the brother on your left and the sister on your right, who's the same as you, come from so and so. You have a care for the community, and in this particular instance, just talking about mental illness. I guess as we're rounding out, what kind of advice would you give to younger people in the Afro-Caribbean community and just the Black country community in general today, for anybody listening?
Listen to that little voice inside you. We don't do it enough. And if I ask everybody here to think about something that you did that you regret, and then ask yourself, did you go against that little voice in your body, in your soul, in your mind? And I'm sure everybody's going to say yes. So therefore that little voice is real. So listen to it. Let it guide you. That little voice is, some people call it your ancestors talking to you. Some call it God, Jesus, whatever you want to call it, right? But it's real. It's real, right? And I think if we listen to it, we'll live a more happier life.
Yeah. Trust the gut feeling, as some people say, the inner voice, as you put it. Okay, well, Xolo, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a very insightful conversation.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's been a lot to grab from this, and we will see you for the next episode.
Thank you.